I was working the front desk at a hotel in Amsterdam when an American guest walked up at 11 p.m. He looked annoyed, really annoyed. He said his room had no ice machine. I told him we don't have ice machines in European hotels. He stared at me like I'd just told him we don't have running water. "How am I supposed to get ice?" he asked. I explained he could ask the bar for ice if he needed some. He shook his head. "This is unbelievable. Every hotel has an ice machine. What kind of place is this?" The thing is, ice machines just aren't a thing here. We don't walk around with giant cups of iced drinks. Our refrigerators make ice if we need it. But to him, a hotel without an ice machine was basically camping. He left a 1-star review that night. The review said we were stuck in the past. Another guest that same week asked why the elevator was so small. I explained it was built in 1880. She said, "Well, you should update it." I told her it's a protected historical building. She said, "That's a terrible excuse." The elevator fit 3 people comfortably. She wanted it to fit 8 people plus luggage. She genuinely thought we were just being cheap. My favorite was the guy who called down at 2 a.m. because his neighbors were making noise. I went up to check. The neighbors were asleep. Complete silence. Turns out, he heard them walking to the bathroom at midnight. Just normal footsteps. He expected me to tell them to stop using their bathroom at night. I tried explaining that people live in hotels, and sometimes they walk around. He said in America, hotels have better soundproofing. I said, "Sir, this building is 200 years old. The walls are half a meter thick." He did not care. Then there was the woman who got mad because checkout was at 11 a.m. She said she paid for the night, so she should get to stay until midnight the next day. I explained that one night means you check out in the morning. She argued for 20 minutes. She kept saying, "A day is 24 hours, so a night should be 2. I gave up and let her talk. Eventually, she left at 2 p.m. and acted like she won. These stories kept coming. Week after week. Different guests. Same confusion. The gap between what Americans expect from hotels and what the rest of the world offers is wild. And it's not just about ice machines. It's about noise rules. Breakfast. Times, air conditioning, tipping, room size, everything. So, let me take you through some of the wildest moments I've seen and heard about. Trust me, it gets better. I was working at a hotel in Copenhagen when a guest asked where the free breakfast buffet was. I told him breakfast costs extra. He looked shocked. The website said breakfast included. I checked his booking. It said breakfast was available, not included. He said that's false advertising. I explained the available means you can buy it. He said in America, available means free. We went back and forth for 5 minutes. Finally, he paid for breakfast. He ate 2 plates of food and said it wasn't worth the money. The breakfast was amazing. Fresh bread, local cheese, smoked salmon. He wanted American pancakes and syrup. Another time, a couple checked in and immediately asked about the air conditioning. I told them the rooms have windows for fresh air. They said they need AC. I explained that it doesn't get hot enough here to need it. They insisted. I brought them a fan. They left a review saying the hotel was uncomfortable and hot. The temperature outside was 68 degrees Fahrenheit. They were wearing shorts and t-shirts. They could have just opened the window. My co-worker in Prague told me about a guest who complained the room was too small. He measured it with his phone. The room was 18 square meters. That's about 194 square feet. Perfectly normal for Europe. He said his closet at home was bigger. He wanted a refund. The manager explained that European rooms are smaller because cities are older and denser. He said, "That's not my problem." He stayed the whole week and complained every single day. Then, There was the guest, who got upset about the pillow. She said it was too soft. She wanted a firm American pillow. I brought her 3 different pillows. None of them worked. She said, "European pillows are designed wrong." I didn't even know pillows could be wrong. She ended up sleeping without a pillow and posted about it online. Her post got 50 comments from other Americans agreeing that European pillows are terrible. A guy once asked me why his room didn't have a coffee maker. I told him coffee is available in the breakfast room. He said he drinks coffee at 5 a.m. before breakfast starts. I offered to leave a thermos of coffee at his door each morning. He said that's inconvenient. He wanted a coffee maker in the room. I explained we don't do that here. He said, "Why not?" I didn't have a good answer except, "Because we don't." He bought a coffee maker from a store, used it for 3 days, then left it in the room when he checked out. I had a woman ask if we could turn off the church bells. The hotel was next to a 600-year-old church. The bells ring every hour. She said they woke her up at 7 a.m. I explained we can't control the church. She said, "Have you tried asking them?" I told her the bells have been ringing for 6 centuries. She said, "Well, it's very rude." She wanted me to call the church and complain. I did not call the church. Another guest complained about the stairs. The hotel had no elevator. It's a small historic building with 3 floors. He said that's a safety issue. I told him it was listed on the website. He said he didn't read that part. He had 2 large suitcases. I offered to help carry them. He said that's not the point. The point is there should be an elevator. I agreed it would be nice, but we can't install one. He said, "Why not?" I said, "Because the building is protected." He said, "That's a bad excuse." He stayed on the 3rd floor for 5 nights and complained about the stairs every single day. A couple once asked why we don't have free parking. I told them parking costs money in the city center. They said their hotel in Texas had free parking. I explained that land in European cities is expensive. They said we should validate their parking. I told them we don't have our own parking. They have to use the public garage. They said that's unfair. They paid $30 a day to park. They were furious. I told them they could take public transit. They said they didn't feel safe on trains. I didn't understand what was unsafe about the train, but I let it go. The weirdest complaint was about the tea kettle. A guest said the kettle was dangerous because it didn't automatically shut off. I checked the kettle. It did automatically shut off. She said it took too long. I told her it takes 2 minutes to boil water. She said American kettles are faster. I explained that our voltage is different. She said we should upgrade. I told her the entire country runs on 230 volts. She said, "That's your problem, not mine." She bought bottled water for the rest of her trip instead of using the kettle. I was working the night shift in Berlin when a guest called at 10:30 p.m. He said the people above him were stomping around. I went to check. The people above him were getting ready for bed. Normal walking. I explained that's just how people sound in old buildings. He said it's unacceptable. I told him quiet hours start at 10 p.m., so they're being respectful. He said, "Walking isn't quiet." I asked what he wanted me to do. He said, "Tell them to stop walking." I did not tell them to stop walking. My manager told me about a guest who complained that housekeeping knocked on her door at 9 a.m. She said, "That's too early." I explained that housekeeping starts at 8 a.m. She said she's on vacation and wants to sleep in. I told her to put the "Do Not Disturb" sign on her door. She said she shouldn't have to. She said housekeeping should assume people are sleeping. I explained that's not how hotels work. She left the "Do Not Disturb" sign up for 3 days, then complained that her room wasn't cleaned. A guy got mad because the front desk was closed at midnight. He needed extra towels. I told him to call the night phone. He said, "That's inconvenient." I explained we're a small hotel with limited staff. He said, "That's not professional." I brought him towels. He said, "See, you're here, so why was the desk closed?" I told him, "I'm the night security guard, not the receptionist." He said, "Same thing." It is not the same thing. Another guest complained about the noise from the street. The hotel was on a busy avenue. She said cars were driving all night. I told her the room faces the street. She said she didn't know that when she booked. I checked her reservation. She booked the street view room. She said, "That's misleading." I offered to move her to a courtyard room. She said no, because that room was smaller. She wanted a bigger room without street noise. That wasn't possible. She left a bad review about the noise. I had a family get upset because the pool closed at 8 p.m. Their kids wanted to swim at 9 p.m. I explained the pool schedule is posted everywhere. They said kids should be allowed to swim whenever they want. I told them other guests are trying to sleep. They said their kids aren't loud. I heard their kids. They were very loud. The family tried to sneak into the pool at 9:30 p.m. I had to kick them out. They called me rude. A woman called the desk at 11 p.m. because someone was talking in the hallway. I checked the cameras. It was two guests saying goodnight to each other. It lasted 30 seconds. I told her it was brief, and they're gone now. She said it was disruptive. I apologized and said I'd remind guests to be quiet. She said, "You need to do more than remind them." I asked what she wanted. She said, "Ban talking in hallways after 9 p.m. I told her that's not realistic. She said, "Then this hotel has no standards." Another guest complained that the breakfast room was too loud. It was 8 a.m. Families were eating and talking. Normal conversation volume. She wanted me to tell everyone to whisper. I said that's not reasonable. She said she has a headache. I suggested she take breakfast to her room. She said she wanted to eat in the breakfast room just without noise. I gave her a table in the corner. She still heard people talking. She left after 5 minutes and skipped breakfast. The wildest one was a guy who said the hotel was too quiet. He said it was creepy. I asked what he meant. He said American hotels have more ambient noise. He missed the sound of ice machines, vending machines, and elevator dings. He said the silence made him uncomfortable. I told him he could leave his TV on for background noise. He said it's not the same. He genuinely wanted me to make the hotel louder. I had no idea how to respond to that. A couple got mad because we wouldn't let them check in at 6 a.m. Check-in starts at 3 p.m. They said they took a red-eye flight and needed to sleep. I explained the previous guest hasn't checked out yet. They said that's not their problem. I offered to store their bags and let them wait in the lobby. They said that's unacceptable. They wanted the room immediately. I told them I could check them in early for an extra fee. They said that's a scam. They sat in the lobby until 3 p.m. and glared at me the whole time. I had a guest complain that the neighboring room was watching TV too loud. It was 7 p.m. I went to check. The TV was at normal volume. I could barely hear it through the wall. I told the first guest that the volume was reasonable. He said he could hear every word. I told him that's how walls work in older buildings. He said we should soundproof the rooms. I explained that's not possible in a historic building. He said, "Everything is possible if you care enough." I did not know how to argue with that logic. I was working in Rome when a guest asked why we don't have ice water at the restaurant. I explained that Italians don't drink ice water. He said, "But I want ice water." I brought him water with ice. He said it wasn't enough ice. I brought him a glass full of ice with a little water. He said, "Finally." Then he asked why the water wasn't free. I told him water costs money in Italy. He said that's illegal. I explained it's normal here. He paid for the water but left no tip. I didn't expect a tip anyway. We don't tip in Italy. Another guest got confused about the bidet. She called down and asked what the weird sink was for. I explained it's a bidet for personal hygiene. She said, "That's disgusting." I told her she doesn't have to use it. She said, "Why is it even there?" I explained it's standard in Italian bathrooms. She said Americans don't use bidets. I said, "I know." She kept calling it the weird sink for the rest of her stay. A guy asked me why the stores were closed on Sunday. I told him it's the law in some areas. Stores close on Sundays. He said that's bad for business. I explained it's meant to give workers a day off. He said, "What if I need something?" I told him to plan ahead. He said that's not convenient. He needed to buy a phone charger. I sold him one from our front desk. He said it was overpriced. I told him he could wait until Monday. He bought it anyway. My co-worker in Vienna told me about a guest who got mad that the grocery store didn't have a bagger. In Austria, you bag your own groceries. The guest just stood there waiting. The cashier gestured to the bags. The guest didn't understand. The line backed up. Someone behind him started bagging his groceries just to move things along. He finally realized and got embarrassed. He later said the system was inefficient. A woman asked why the shower didn't have a curtain. I told her European bathrooms usually have a glass panel or just a drain in the floor. She said water was getting everywhere. I checked the bathroom. She was spraying water across the entire room. I showed her how to angle the shower head. She said the design was bad. I explained that millions of people use this design every day. She said they're all wrong. Another guest complained about the outlets. She said they didn't fit her plugs. I told her she needs an adapter. She said she didn't bring one. I sold her an adapter. She said we should have American outlets. I explained we use European plugs in Europe. She said that's inconvenient for tourists. I told her tourists usually bring adapters. She said she didn't know she needed one. The adapter cost €3. She acted like I charged her 100. I had a guy get upset because the hotel didn't have a gym. I told him there's a public gym 2 blocks away. He said he wants a gym in the hotel. I explained we're a small boutique hotel. He said that's not an excuse. He wanted to cancel his reservation. I told him cancellations have a fee. He stayed and complained about not having a gym every single day. He never actually went to the public gym. A couple asked why we don't have a luggage cart. I told them we have small trolleys. They said those aren't big enough. Their suitcases were massive. I offered to help carry them. They said no. They struggled with the trolley for 10 minutes. I watched from the desk. They finally asked for help. I carried their bags up 3 floors. They didn't say thank you. They just went into their room and closed the door. Another guest got confused about the light switches. European switches are different. They flip down to turn on. She kept flipping them up and wondering why the lights weren't working. She called down and said the lights were broken. I came up and flipped the switches down. The lights turned on. She said, "That's backwards." I told her it's normal here. She said it's confusing. I agree it's different, but not confusing once you know. She flipped them the wrong way for the rest of her trip and kept calling down about broken lights. A guy asked why his phone wasn't working. I asked if he had international service. He said no. I told him he needs to activate it or use Wi-Fi. He said Wi-Fi should be free. I told him it was free. He said the signal was weak in his room. I explained the walls are thick. He said that's unacceptable. I offered to move him to a room closer to the router. He said no. He wanted me to install a router in his room. I told him that's not possible. He spent his entire trip complaining about Wi-Fi while refusing to switch rooms. The strangest one was a woman who said the beds were made wrong. She said the duvet was too fluffy. I asked what she meant. She said American beds have flat sheets and thin blankets. European beds just have duvets. She didn't like it. I brought her extra blankets. She tried to recreate an American bed. It didn't work. She said she couldn't sleep. I offered her a different room. She said the bed would be the same. She was right. She spent the whole week tired and grumpy because of the duvet. I was working my last shift in Amsterdam when a guest walked up. He looked happy. He said, "I just wanted to say this was the best hotel I've ever stayed at." I was shocked. I thanked him. He said, "I know I complained about the ice machine on day 1, but I get it now. You don't need ice machines. The water from the tap is cold enough." I smiled. He said, "And the room was small, but it was cozy. And the breakfast was different, but it was really good." I didn't expect to like it, but I did. He told me he learned a lot. He said he realized that just because something is different doesn't mean it's wrong. He said Americans get so used to their way of doing things that they forget other systems work too. He said he's going to travel more and complain less. I told him that's great. He left me a good review. It made my whole week. But for every guest like him, there were 10 others who never adapted. The people who spent their entire trip angry that Europe isn't America. The ones who left bad reviews because the outlets were different, or the bread wasn't soft enough, or the hotel didn't have free refills. The ones who expected everyone to speak perfect English and got mad when they didn't. I've heard stories from hotels in Tokyo, Paris, Barcelona, Athens, you name it. Same patterns everywhere. Americans showing up and expecting everything to work exactly like it does back home. Getting upset when it doesn't. Calling things broken or backwards or outdated when really, it's just different. And look, it's not about bashing Americans. Most travelers are lovely. But there's this specific subset who just can't adjust, who sees every cultural difference as a personal inconvenience, who think their 5-day trip gives them the authority to tell a whole country how to run their hotels. The funny part is, Europeans visiting America probably have the same confusions in reverse. They probably wonder why Americans need so much ice. Why are the portions so big? Why tipping is mandatory? Why is everything so loud? Culture shock goes both ways, but those stories don't end up on Reddit as much. Maybe because Europeans complain less, or maybe because Americans don't notice when someone quietly disagrees with the way things work. Either way, these stories never stop coming. Every week, someone new checks in. Someone who doesn't understand the shower. Someone who wants the hotel to change the church bells. Someone who measures their room and gets offended. And I'll be here at the front desk explaining that no, we cannot install an elevator in a 400-year-old building. And yes, you really do need an adapter. And no, the bidet is not a foot bath. Welcome to European hotels. Enjoy your stay.